Amazing. All right. So welcome everybody. And also if you're joining us on the stream, thanks for joining us. And I really hope you'll enjoy this. It's so nice to see you all. So From Arthur's Seat, as most of you will probably know, is the anthology of short prose and poetry that the MSc students in creative writing at the University of Edinburgh publish each year. And I'm Lena Kraus. I'm the editor-in-chief of this volume, the 5th volume. Yeah. Okay, so this is really special because for a lot of us, it's the first time ever our writing is published. And even if it isn't, it's turned out to be a really nice book. And so it's still pretty special. Also, all these writers who will be reading for you today are my very good friends, and I haven't seen them in a while. And so it's so nice to see you all and to do this together today. And even if this launch isn't like we imagine it would be, it's still pretty cool. So writers, enjoy it. And everybody who's joining us on the stream, hope you enjoy it too. Okay, so I wanted to start this off with a couple of questions to team members, because what's really special about this anthology is that we didn't only write for it, we also produced it, which meant going through all the steps that are involved in actually publishing a book, getting all the files ready, promoting it, having it printed, and getting the website ready, getting the orders ready, promoting it on social media, etc. So first of all, we've got Alex here, who's our event manager, and also Lauren, who is the copy editor. And so Alex would have planned the launch if it had happened in a physical place where we could all be together. And Lauren has taken over and made this amazing online launch happen that we're having now. And I just wanted to ask you both, could you please tell us a little bit about that process?
Well, I guess we'll sort of go in chronological order, I suppose. So I had been planning a whole big series of readings and hopefully some get-togethers that we were just in the process of really starting to make into something concrete when everything closed shop. So I'm hoping, I mean, usually the process goes that you talk to local businesses, you talk with cafes, and we were working with some of the libraries to try to, bring together events where we can have people coming and doing readings and sharing their work and talking maybe a little bit about the program with some undergrads, that kind of thing. And obviously that didn't happen for a number of reasons, but I'm really hoping that we'll be able to get something together maybe later in the summer or in the fall around graduation, when people, sort of can reconvene on Edinburgh. So fingers crossed, but it's amazing. I'm just pitching over to Lauren, who's done amazing work getting this all together online, like absolutely fantastic. I'm so impressed.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Lena. Yeah, so I'm Lauren. I am the copy editor. Before I came to do this program, I was a communications professional, and I did especially digital communications and social media and stuff like that. So I already had a few tools in my toolbox to set up stuff like this. So it was it was like riding a bicycle for me to take over and get some online events started. And none of these were my ideas, by the way. I was just helping to execute. Like, we had lots of good ideas coming in from different people on the team. Shout out to Nick, who actually gave us the idea for streaming a Zoom meeting onto YouTube in the first place. And so it's just a matter of basically setting up a bunch of links, making sure everyone has access to those links, and then emailing every person you know, the equivalent to what Alex would have been doing by going to bookshops and talking to people. I'm just emailing bookshops and asking them to please retweet us. And it's going pretty well so far, and it's nice to see everyone here and tuning in. So thank you, guys.
Amazing. Thank you, Lauren, and thank you, Alex. Okay, and then in terms of promoting this event on a different platform. We've got Saoirse here, who's been responsible for running the FAS Instagram. And I would be really interested in like what you thought was particularly important about that and what your strategy was.
Yeah, I thought it would be very important for us to show who we are, because as writers, we're always kind of behind the words and you don't really see our faces and you don't really hear much about us. So I wanted to feature each writer with their face, with something about them, and then a bit of their writing. And for all of the photos in the backgrounds of the writing, I used pictures from Edinburgh only, because I thought that also really represented what we're doing and how it's so important that we are a team here in this city.
Thanks, Saoirse. Yeah, I completely agree about the team thing. And I'm very lucky to have as awesome a team as you all. Thanks, everybody. Right, and then I want to come back to Lauren briefly, because you've talked about how you manage these events, but actually your role was copy editor, and I would love to hear just a couple of things about that as well, and especially why. I know you're really enthusiastic about it, and if you could tell us why you love being a copy editor, that would be great.
Thanks, Lena. I think enthusiastic is a very nice way to describe it. I love grammar and punctuation, essentially, and I think I'm definitely the kind of like type A rule following person who just like gets very annoyed when I see something that's incorrect. If you are tuning in and you know me as a person, then you will know that this is the case. With copy editing, I really love that it feels like a puzzle sometimes. You're not just trying to make people's writing more correct and making basic fixes, but you're trying to make it better. If there's something that's confusing, you get to spend a lot of time thinking about how you can sort of untangle a sentence to make it clearer. It helps to know, you know, some obscure grammar rules, but mostly it's just about being a careful reader and making sure that each person's work is the best it can be. This was a particularly fun project because we have so many writers from all over the world. So I wasn't just working with a style of English that I was familiar with and that I think is better. But I was, you know, accommodating all the different spellings and punctuations and things, and also some slang that I learned along the way that I wasn't familiar with before. So it was really fun. I definitely learned a lot. And it's very gratifying to work with a writer to get the story to a place where they really like it and it still feels like theirs, but it now sort of flows and has locked into place as a continuous part of this work. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Amazing. Thanks, Lauren. And actually, I would have followed up with a question about the different styles of English, because we're writers from all over the place. And obviously, like, I wasn't going to prescribe to anybody that they had to write in a style of English that's not theirs. So if you get our book and you read it, you'll find that there are different Englishes in it. And yeah, huge kudos to Lauren for proofreading that all, editing that all, and the proofreaders for proofreading it all. It can't have been easy, and it's definitely like something you can be very proud of, and that I'm proud of. All right, so we're gonna have time for more questions at the end of the readings, but right now we're ready to actually start the readings, which I'm pretty sure is the part that people have been looking forward to most, or at least I have been looking forward to most. And I can see the chat on YouTube, so I can see your comments that you put on YouTube. And I would encourage you to, if you have any questions to the writers, please put them in the YouTube chat as the questions come up. So don't wait for me to say now we have room for questions. Just type them as you think of them, because then I can read them out right away when we have room for the questions. So the way this is going to work is that 2 readers will read, and then there's room for questions. So it's always pairs of 2, and then 1 triplet at the end. All right. Cool. So first of all, we have Kit Nicholson, who is a writer and a cycling journalist and moved to Edinburgh because of Robin Williams. So that's something I would definitely like to ask you about if I had the chance to ask a question. She likes to explore the fickleness of memory. So I don't know, hopefully that'll feature in the excerpt that we'll hear from you today. And then, and Kit will be reading from her story, Jam. And then we have Saoirse Ibagwin, and Saoirse will be reading from Forward, which is the only piece of memoir we have from Arthur's Seat. So that's really special, and I'm glad we have that sort of diversity in the anthology. Saoirse is a writer from Florida, and for her, adventure and writing go hand in hand. So she loves writing fiction, but she also loves writing memoir, for example, about her 6 months through hike of the Appalachian Trail. All right, so Kit, whenever you're ready.
Sorry, quickly, Lena, before we begin, do you want to go back into speaker view so that we can spotlight the readers?
Yes, I will. Thanks, Lauren. All right, so Kit, whenever you're ready, you can take it away.
Lovely, thanks, Lena. I'll actually be reading the whole of Jam because it's a short piece of flash fiction. Here goes. On the night Phillips died, I knew for sure that I would survive. He'd gone to join Tibbs and Moore and Granger and Davison and Yates and Higgins and Smith and Sergeant Stock and Captain Rivers and Mother and Rebecca and Aunt Ruth and Pop and Patch and Bubbles and Mr. Tom and Bertie. They'd snatched his life away, Phillips, who'd shared his mother's jam with the men, spooned grotesquely on 2 grimy fingers into our gaping mouths, who'd shouted crossword puzzle clues unanswered, who'd howled with a whooping laugh, who'd mastered an uncanny impression of Major Forsyth. They'd killed him, they'd stolen his future, they'd silenced his voice, they'd set him free. He had been the last of us. Everyone around me now stood in the boots of the dead or wounded. My friends, who had been filled with such hope, who had played football behind the line, whose lives brimmed with enthusiasm, spilling over in laughter. A few now lay quiet, hollow, under coarse white sheets, mere spectres of their old selves. But most had been laid to rest forever, under the heavy comfort of foreign mud, the lucky ones. And here I stood, blood warming my icy veins, the most ghostly of the lot, left behind to walk the earth, to traipse through hungry mud alone, left to continue the fight for something far beyond my understanding, beyond anyone's. I was empty, numb, stunned. I didn't care. I had nothing to care for. I was the perfect soldier. I accepted death. I welcomed it. But I was invincible, reluctantly, inevitably, bitterly invincible. This war would not kill me. Spanish flu would not kill me. Cigarettes and alcohol, not even grief, would eventually kill me. I would be made to wait a whole lifetime. Not Bertie. That firecracker of orange hair and dirty freckles. He was my best friend, my confidant, my comrade. Only 2 years had separated us, but he'd got stuck. I'd kept getting older, but he stayed 6 years old. Small boys fight, we all know that. Our temperatures ran high, breathless, our stringy little bodies swollen and contorted with passion and energy. We never felt anything that wasn't on a grand scale, explosive, exciting, dangerous. Brain bleed, they called it. He hit his head on the toy box and never woke up. I didn't mean to kick so hard, both feet and burning with frustration. I can still feel what it felt like, hear the ringing in my ears, the tension in my neck and shoulders. But I don't remember why. Mother had got sick then. Father too, though his was self-inflicted. And now Phillips. They'd got him in the face, ripped his jaw wide open, chunks of flesh like sticky jam. He'd never laugh again, but he didn't know it. I did. I'd carry that silence with me forever.
Okay, I'm Saoirse, and this is from Forward, a bit of memoir about through hiking the Appalachian Trail. I pull myself up to the gateway, the end of the most difficult part of the climb, and the beginning of the tablelands, a rock-strewn victory walk to the summit. But I can't taste the victory yet. I can no longer see the path to the end of this journey I've been on for 6 months. With a howl almost too quiet for what it signifies, a sudden rush of clouds rolls in and entirely shrouds the mountain, closing me in, mercilessly erasing the panoramic views of Maine's jagged mountains and vast lakes. It all vanishes. All those miles I've hiked, all that land I wanted to look at from the very top. Now there is nothing but the mist, my boots, and my eyes straining to see 10 feet in front of me. I fight the urge to fall to my hands and knees and crawl the rest of the way. Though I'm bracing myself with all my strength, the wind is so strong that I imagine every time I lift a boot, I might be picked up and blown away. Could my body float back to Georgia and the beginning of the trail? Or would it go all the way to my home in Florida? I'm not sure where home is anymore. I keep fighting, looking ahead, but thinking back to the early days of my hike, to North Carolina, when the weather was cold, but nothing like this. I remember the conversation I had with a German woman, one of many people I would meet from around the world, all drawn by the siren song of the longest footpath on earth. The woman's trail name was Brick. Almost everyone who thru hikes the Appalachian Trail acquires a trail name, gifted to them by other hikers, by themselves, by the journey. Mine is Story. Sitting with Brick in a hostel owned by a man named Zen, I both loved and felt baffled by this world of people walking, running away, using assumed names, banishing their real lives. I ran my hands over the leather cover of a decades-old trail guide. "It's strange, isn't it?" said Brick, "just walking in one direction. Usually you walk for a bit and then turn around, go back to your car or something, but out here you never look back." I didn't know what to say then. I just sat with her words. I couldn't know about any of the things I was hiking toward. I couldn't foresee the spider that would find its way into my bra and bite me, the bite that would turn into a wound, the doctor who would dig at it with a scalpel while I sobbed in a church parking lot, surrounded by other injured hikers whose health and comfort were always at the mercy of strangers and volunteers. I couldn't have known that I would reach the halfway point and spend 2 hours forcing my way through half a gallon of chocolate ice cream in order to uphold a long-standing trail tradition and prove my worth. I couldn't yet understand that all of the hardest miles truly were ahead of me, but that everything else was ahead of me too. The changing of the leaves in New Hampshire, the wild ponies in Virginia, the verdant forests in Vermont, everyone singing "Take Me Home, Country Roads" and dancing at the yearly hiker festival, the trail magic and all the trail angels who would provide it in the form of warm pancakes and fresh fruit and toilet paper out of the backs of their trucks on the side of the road somewhere in the mountains. All of these things were yet to come. "Out here, you never look back," Brick said. For 185 days, I have not looked back. I have trudged up mountains, brown with dead leaves and deep mud. I have bounded down hills, green and vibrant in their summer glory. I have faced black bears and rattlesnakes, looked in their shining eyes and kept on walking. I have suffered hard falls and sickness, felt my skin slick with sweat and my muscles seized from exertion. I have climbed mountains from dawn until dusk every day for half a year. I've carried my life on my back and slept in the woods. I've walked 2,190.9 miles. I've traveled all the way from Georgia to Maine on my feet. Even at the end, I barely have an answer to give people when they ask why I'm doing this. I'm doing it for the little girl who knew she was meant to hike, even though she was born in a swamp and had only the flattest pavement to walk on. I'm doing it because it was that little girl's biggest dream, and I could never rest until I put my hands on that sign at the end of all those miles. For her, and for the me that she grew into, I keep heading north. On this last push to the summit, I think of my first day, on top of Springer Mountain in Georgia, questioning whether I could really do this. I think of the panic attack in my tent, my breath coming in short gasps as the wind whipped around me, and I felt like a broken rowboat on a wild sea. Now I've almost done it, and the summit fever takes me. I may not be able to see anything through the clouds, but I know which direction to move in, forward. My feet scramble, my arms reach out to prevent a fall this close to the end. I stumble over wet rocks with abandon, knowing what's so close now, maybe just a few feet away. Blinded with melting frost dripping from my hat and my braids whipping across my eyes, I squint and can finally make out a wooden sign, desolate, alone on top of the world, waiting for me to touch it after years of dreaming. I know what it says without reading it. I rush forward into the mist. Thank you.
Thank you. That was some beautiful reading from both of you. Thanks so much for contributing to this in this way. And
Lena, I think you've muted yourself on accident here.
thank you, Alex. I have. I'm back now, hopefully. Yes, amazing. Sorry about that. So we've got a couple of questions, and one is from Julianne, who has made our amazing website, and she's asking, Kit, do you prefer flash fiction to longer fiction, or do you like a bit of both?
This is actually the first piece of flash fiction that I've ever written, and I think the only piece of flash fiction I've ever written. So I suppose, it's the piece I'm most proud of ever having written. But I have only ever written long things before, so read into that what you will.
Amazing, thanks, Kit. Yeah, wow, that's really special to have that piece in from Arthur's Seat then. Thanks for sharing it with us. And we've got a question for Saoirse from Marta. And she's asking, what's the biggest appeal to writing a memoir? And I also know that you always encourage people to try writing memoir. And yeah, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, you guys are probably tired of me saying for the entire year, everybody write your story, please. Everybody has a story. I really believe that. And I think you just need to sit down and write it. I think the truth is so much stranger than fiction, as cliche as that is. And writing it in a way that I find poetic or beautiful, it really is a way for me to talk about real life in the way that I experience real life, which is maybe a bit strange, but yeah, I love memoir.
Thank you, Saoirse. And also, just for the writers, there are so many clapping hands in the YouTube chat, and it must be strange to read and like speak to people without actually hearing any applause, but I can see the chat, and I don't know if you can all see it, but there's a lot of applause going on there. We've got one last short question for Kit from Marta, which is, what attracted you to the time period that your piece is set in?
I've always been very interested in historical fiction, and predominantly World War II. This is really World War One, and honestly, I think it was my own pop who. He was a boy during the war, and he was obsessed with Spitfires, and so he told me stories of that he'd heard as a child, and I just really fed off those, just stories of adversity and resistance, and just, I don't know, fighting for what you believe in with your friends. So that's really that's really what draws me to those stories, I think.
Thank you, Kit. So family connections, family history, lovely. Yeah, so thanks to those two brave first readers. And we're moving on to our first poet who's reading today, Sky. Sky is a glittery rugby playing feminist, and she writes poetry about womanhood, hope and belonging. She will be reading for us today her two poems, The Farrier's Daughter and The Girls Are Laughing at the Gym, and I'm really looking forward to hearing those because I've only ever read them so far. And then we have Lola. Lola is a multinational anti-nationalist polyglot who spent her childhood in Holland and Spain. She likes writing about the dark, magical and the disturbed, and she will be reading from her short story Ink Beetles today. All right, Sky, whenever you're ready, let's hear your poems.
Hello, so as Lena says, I'm Sky. I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction because my family profession is a bit of a weird one. So for 200 years, my family have been farriers, so they make horseshoes, put them on horses, do general sort of metalwork. And my brothers are, I think they're the 9th generation of my family that are farriers. So it's something that's absolutely in my blood, but this is a poem about my dad. It's called The Farrier's Daughter. 200 years ago, my blood picked up a hammer. The blows have formed my bones. I am 17 hands tall, 13 to the withers, and every day I weave my hair into a tail. Once a length of steel is made white hot and hammered into shape, it is plunged in cold water, hardens, becomes strong again. Last year, I almost drowned, but I was forged in fire. I am my flame. Mounted on a wall the right way up, a horseshoe forms a bowl, holds luck for your home. Farriers hammer them, heels down over our doors. I am nothing now, although I will be. I don't gather luck, I make my own. So that's my first poem. And my second one, I've played rugby, as Lena said, since I was about 14, and it's just been one of the best things in my life. During lockdown, I've not been in the gym, but this is about my old rugby team at Strathclyde. We used to go to the gym together, and it was just a wholesome, wonderful experience. It's called The Girls Are Laughing in the Gym. Striding in, an army, matching shorts and sports bras, bruises blooming on thick thighs, high ponytails fly from side to side as we strut, scope the weights room, carve out our corner with explosive snorts of laughter, teeth glinting white in fluorescent mouths wide enough to swallow shame, shoulders squared against men who mean to shrink us, but always smiling at other women. We invite them, cackling, into our coven, share our bottles of protein potion, protect each other, learn to look after ourselves, feel our fibers tear, rebuild, renew. Thank you. I'm really excited to hear what Lola has to read.
Hi. She had seen them for as long as she remembered. Small, shadowy critters that scattered around in nooks and corners and skittered on the edges of her vision. No one else saw them, she'd learned early on. A fat little finger pointing inquisitively, asking Mummy, "What is?" But Mummy didn't see the shiny oil slick colored shells that crawled along the pink digit, up her, onto her, into her hair and her ears. Mummy, irritated, snappy. Eyes that didn't turn to look at her, but stayed firmly fixed on the laundry, the groceries, the Hoover. A downturned mouth. "Mummy, what is?" repeated, until Mummy made a tutting noise with her mouth. Once, twice, and then the question stopped. It was unnatural. Questions are to be asked by children, such is the law of the land, and when she grew up without them, people noticed. Not consciously, not overtly, but they knew. They felt it in their little fingers and their wisdom teeth, like crows a storm. The girl was odd, off. The neighbor knew it, the baker knew it, her report card knew it. Interior, it said, disguising revulsion as polite concern, has a difficult time socializing, hasn't mastered social interactions yet. This was no wonder. Her peers knew it too. Socializing is an act of two, a tug of war between parties willing, and they did not want anything to do with the eerie, quiet little thing that never looked at them directly, never talked, never questioned. Her eyes were pallid and round like a fish, and they stared intently at nothing at all, as small teeth thoughtfully nursed the thin bottom lip. They rolled around in long figures of 8, trailing around the room and traveling along beams and curtains, but no matter how hard her classmates looked, they didn't see anything for the girl to pay such close attention to. "What are you looking at?" again and again, turning into, "What's wrong with you, freak? And get away from us! And Mrs. Cranley, she's doing it again!" Her classmates could not see the shiny beetles all around her, but they were there. As she grew older, they grew bolder. They emerged from the corner of her eye to crawl around in plain sight. In class, they dotted chalk eyes and traced printed borders protecting mapped countries. Closer, closer still. They crawled around the back of a classmate's head and disappeared into soft locks of hair, as if they'd sunk into her skull. She'd watched him creep closer, dropping from scrunchies and butterfly clips onto the pages of her notebook, skittering across the thin blue lines until she was almost bent double over her desk. And then a finger, thinner now, still pale pink, reaching out and squishing the shiny little bead into the paper, eyes widening and a soft exhale of breath as her finger sunk into nothing but sticky pitch black, now smeared across her schoolwork. Ink, dark and slick, like an oil spill. That was me, thank you.
Thank you, Lola. Thank you, Sky. That was beautiful. You're not only good at writing, you're also so good at reading. This is really lovely. I'm really proud of you all. I've got a question to Sky from Alicia. And Alicia writes, question for Sky, your work is so imaginistic, so vibrant. What is your process like? Are these images intuitive, or do they come through in revision?
Oh, that's really, really nice from Alicia. Most of them, I think, are somewhat intuitive, but it's always, I tend to write just a big, ugly block of words, and then I'm like, oh, there's a couple of nice images in here. So I think the images sort of quite often come easily, but then actually structuring the poem I find quite difficult. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks. And there's actually another question for Sky. From Marta. Do you believe your experience with ironwork and the process of it has made you approach poetry work differently?
Oh, I love that question. I'm not sure. I could, just to clarify, I could not make anything if I tried. My dad, my grandpa, both my brothers, everyone can do it, but except me. But I was thinking about that earlier, actually. The way that, you know, everyone in my family sort of creates something. I don't know if it's, yeah, because as I say, I write a big block of prose and then, yeah, sort of hammer it into shape. So I think, yeah, you could say it's comparative. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. And thanks for the questions too, people. We need you to ask questions, and it's really, really great. Like, my biggest fear was that we wouldn't get any questions and I'd have to make them up all by myself. I've got a question from Katie to Lola. Do you tend to write shorter things? And if you go for longer things, do you play with your sentence length more? And Katie also says she loves the fragmented feel and flow of this short piece.
Oh, thank you so much. I do write a lot of longer stuff, and I think that indeed when you do, it's a lot more important to sort of make sure you vary it more. Personally, I think how much I vary my sentence length depends a lot on the character and the piece itself. I was sort of trying to go for something slightly choppy and also childlike, and so very long, elaborate sentences could at times feel a little, I don't know, fake, I guess.
Thanks, Lola. Yeah, I just want to read out a tiny section of the praise. Like, everybody is basically saying you're all amazing. Our tutor, Robert Allen Jameson, actually responded to when you said you can't make a thing. He said, but you do make poetry. And yeah, Eileen said, wow, Lola, your reading as well as writing was simply beautiful. And yeah, let's not forget the Scots word for poet is, and I have no idea how to pronounce this, Macar?
Macker.
Macker, okay. I'm learning. I'm trying
The only
very
Scot.
hard. Okay. And yeah, also for Lola, that was gorgeous, and the childlike voice was done very well. Yeah, we should learn, indeed, we should learn how to say poet in many languages. Thanks, Raj, for enlightening us with that. All right, so we will now move on to the next two writers, and we've got Alex Penland. Alex spent a lot of their childhood at the Smithsonian Museum. Oh God, I'm sorry, Smithsonian Museum. Their work explores agency and conflict under adventurous circumstances. So I'm excited to hear about that. And Alex will be reading for us today from Ordinary Death. And then Alex will be joined by Lauren N. Thurman, who you've heard from in her double role as organizer of this stream and as, more importantly, copy editor of our anthology. She's a writer and editor from Colorado, and she writes about the weird and lonely, the quiet and the fantastic. Her work has appeared in the Moth Radio Hour. So Lauren will be reading from her short piece, History. All right, so Alex, whenever you're ready.
All right, hello. I just want to preface this by saying this is a science fiction piece that is the only piece I've ever written in second person, but it reads out loud really well. So yeah, here we go. Welcome, and do not be afraid. You have died an ordinary death under extraordinary circumstances. We at the Unfulfilled Promises Research Trust understand your alarm at this situation and are working to ensure your transition is as painless as possible. Do not be afraid. Your memories are not gone, but have been temporarily suspended for your comfort. The Unfulfilled Promises Research Trust is, to you, an extraterrestrial organization. We are dedicated to the preservation and memorialization of cultures which have been lost before they were able to fulfill their true potential. Our organization identifies fledgling species that are deemed at risk for untimely extermination, often due to self-destructive tendencies, perilous evolutionary circumstances, or impending conquest, and gathers as much information on them as is realistically possible to preserve. With this information, we create and maintain a list of potential subjects for trial should the necessity arise. In the event of a fledgling species demise, these potential subjects are then screened, and a small number are selected for resurrection. We regret to inform you that this is what has happened to the human species. You are one of 12 representatives of your planet chosen for trial, and one of 6 human beings. You will undoubtedly have questions. Many of them cannot be answered yet. Those which can be answered, I will answer now. Why has my access to my personal memory been suspended? Past experience has shown that immediate access to personal memories, such as the faces of loved ones or the circumstances of one's death, cause more distress than comfort. These memories will be released to you throughout your trial. Impersonal knowledge, such as arithmetic, cultural history, and media, and the name of your species, should still be accessible. If you find yourself unable to access impersonal knowledge, please report to me for immediate termination. Will the other members of my species be someone I know? The estimated chance of your being connected to one of the other human beings is roughly 5 in 7 billion. While not impossible, it is extremely unlikely that you have crossed paths. Additionally, you will not be introduced to one another until after the first examinations of the trial have been completed, so it is best not to dwell on their existence. Is it possible to bring back someone I love? No. The Trust has extremely limited resources. We apologize for the inconvenience. What happened to my planet? Earth itself is still present, but the majority of life has been extinguished. According to our research, you should already be aware of the major contributor, which is common knowledge rather than memory. A small group of influential human beings created systematic changes to the atmosphere, which caused irreparable changes in your natural environment. For various reasons, your species was unable to fight these changes in meaningful ways. This was the catalyst for floods, fires, plagues, and damaging storms, as well as damage to infrastructure. The ensuing political friction caused war, which ended the lives of anyone who survived the initial turbulence. Other questions will be answered in person. Your memories will be released to you as the trial progresses. In the meantime, this is what you can expect. The trial will last for a period of 216 days. Days here are defined by your home planet's rotation, in which your suitability will be assessed. During that time, you will complete a number of projects and undergo a series of examinations, both physical and mental. The outcome of these examinations will determine your species' potential for growth and readiness for the galactic stage. If you are successful in your examinations, a petition will be submitted on your behalf, which, if accepted, will register your species in the intergalactic community. An acceptance will also allow the Unfulfilled Promises Research Trust to allocate its resources to your continued survival. We regret that we do not have enough resources to continue to provide for species which are not successful in their petition. My name is Multitudes, but for simplicity's sake, you may call me Eve. I will be your case manager for the next 216 days and will guide you through the trial. I will be in touch in person very soon. When we meet, your trial will begin. Good luck. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. I'm going to be reading just the very beginning from my story called History. I want to just give a heads up and a content warning that this story includes scenes of sexual harassment. So if that's something that's going to be triggering or difficult for you, please feel free to come back in about 2.5 minutes. Okay. She got the first one when she was 10. It's near her right armpit, a purplish splotch on the creamy underside of her arm. Emma was walking home from school in her sprawled suburban neighborhood of split levels and parched lawns when she turned onto the 3rd street from her house and a flurry of motion caught her eye. A man was sitting halfway out the driver's seat of his car with his pants pulled over his knees and his hand moving up and down between his legs, like he was trying to get ketchup out of a bottle. He was smiling at her. Emma's face was hot. She felt ashamed, though she wasn't sure why, and she hurried up the street and around the corner. She turned back once to check if he was still looking at her, but all she could see was his open car door. She didn't tell her parents. It would have made her feel even more ashamed to talk about it. And the next morning, she noticed the splotch. When her mom grabbed her arm and asked, "Honey, what's this?" Emma said it was just a bruise from the monkey bars, and from then on, she wore longer sleeves. The spot got a little bigger when she was 17. She stepped out of a friend's car on a hot summer day, and the memory of another man in another car came back to her, sharp and sudden. She breathed through her teeth as she understood more fully what had happened, what she had been made part of, and the splotch grew to the size of a small child's hand. But by then, it wasn't her only one. She got the second when she was 13 and a guy pinched her ass at the mall, on a dare she heard. She thought it was a bruise, but it just never went away. When, in junior year, a senior boy sent a group of her friends a picture of his genitals, a splotch bloomed on the back of her knee. "You mean you don't get stuff like this after guys do things like that?" she asked her friend Corinne the next day. Emma had thought they would be comparing splotches, but Corinne had only stared at her. "That's crazy, dude. I've never seen anything like that." "Like my spots or like that?" Emma nodded meaningfully toward the blank screen of her phone, which was heavy and potent with the new threat of things it could show them. "Like those," Corinne said, gesturing to the parts of Emma's body where she had just shown off her marks. "You get them anytime something like this happens?" Emma nodded. "Pretty much, yeah." "Weird. I can't believe you don't have more." And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you both. Again, so beautifully read, and I will keep repeating myself tonight. I would say these are two things that we would like to avoid. So let's hope we can stop things before it comes to Alex's story, and let's hope we can make what's happening in Lauren's story stop. It is very much still happening every day, and it shouldn't. So yeah, important to speak out on those things. All right, we've got questions for you as well. And I'm just scrolling up right now to see that I don't miss any. So yeah, we've got a question from Monica, and Monica says, I love your piece, Alex. Great reading. Question, how was the experience of writing in a style you're not familiar with? What were your speed bumps when attempting a different style?
Well, I worked with a nonprofit organization for a couple of years, so it wasn't a terribly unfamiliar style. I'm very used to the, writing out the official voice, but in this case, it was just applying that official voice to something that's like way off the wall. But I would say one of the big speed bumps for this piece in particular was mostly just making sure that I got across the information that I wanted to get across as clearly as possible, without it feeling like too much of an information dump, since the format that it's written in is a memo, which is literally a dump of information. So yeah, it was trying to make it engaging while writing in what's sort of a necessarily kind of boring format.
Thank you. And we've got another question to Alex from Calder, who just wants to make me say Smithsonian again. Alex, which is your favorite wing in the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History?
East Wing represent. That was my mom works as a scuba diver there, and so I grew up volunteering in the dive locker in the East Wing of the Natural History Museum.
Thank you. Okay.
Lena, sorry, you're on mute again.
Lena, you're still muted.
I just muted myself while I was looking for more questions, because I have to click back and forth, and I don't know how loud the clicking is in the actual video. Okay, so basically lots of love for you again with all of this, and yeah, there's a comment here for Lauren saying, love the from Kira, love the idea of showing sexual harassment visually on the body. Sad to say most women would be covered head to toe by the time we're 20. Yeah, and this just kind of also ties in with art having the potential to be political and all that, and I think we have a lot of pieces in from Arthur Seat that kind of speak to the times we live in, and that's another factor that I'm really proud of. And I'm just gonna have one last look at the questions. So we have a question for Lauren from August. My mum wants to know how Lauren got the idea for the splotches. So Lauren, if you want to answer August's mum, that would be great.
I would love to. That's a good question. I had sort of the template idea for the phenomenon in this story a long time ago, where I wanted a girl to be sort of marked and darkened and splotched by something, but I just like wasn't sure yet. And then I think I just got like really, really angry about sexual harassment and patriarchy when it was time to write this story. And I thought that this was a good sort of reason for that phenomenon to occur. And I liked the idea of, as Kira mentioned, like victimization being shown on the body in some way, and sort of what that could do to a person, and what it says sort of about like trauma and memory and the things that we have to deal with. So yeah, just sort of like an idea that had been stewing for a really long time, suddenly connecting to sort of a newer, fresher story concept.
Thanks, Lauren. Yeah, I mean, for me, when I read your story, it was also about if this sort of stuff was more visible, then maybe quite a lot would change. And yeah, it can be made visible by speaking out about it in part.
Absolutely.
Right. So in that, oh, we've got a nice comment here saying, Alex, your mum is a hero, and I don't want to deprive you of that. And
he's definitely a hero.
yeah, and a lot more applause and a lot more, you know, praise and encouragement. So do have a read through the comments when this is over, and you know, we need all the praise and encouragement we can get to have the confidence to put ourselves out there. And it's so nice of you guys. Thanks so much for all your lovely comments and questions. Yeah, and that brings us to the last group of readers, and this one is actually a group of 3. And it starts with Zala. Zala is a Slovenian writer and an editor currently based in Edinburgh. And this is all like too many tongue twisters tonight for me. She holds a double BA in English and French from the University of Ljubljana, which is a super beautiful city that I've been to and I'm nostalgic about. She loves food. She's an avid foodie and full-time bookworm and enjoys discovering new fictional worlds as well as creating her own. And I know for a fact that that her story today has created a very special world that we will be immersed in. Next, we have Leslie, who will be reading a bit of a wild card. Leslie is a poet with work in various magazines. Her stuff is in storage in Portland, Oregon, and her mail goes to her brother in Baltimore. So there you go. I think that's kind of describes a lot of us at the moment, kind of in transition between different homes. And then this is completed by Abby Randall. She's a writer from Colorado and enjoys writing fiction with a touch of the fantastical, the magical, or the eerie. And she'll be reading from her short story, The Problem with Trumpets, today. All right, so Zala, whenever you're ready, we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Lena. So hi, everyone. My name is Zala, and I will be reading the beginning of my short story titled The Hunt. I come from the north. The plains were my home once, and my people were of the desert, but the sun was cold there and the sand white. The traveler's words were sharpened by an accent Shem had come to associate with heavily bearded nomads who wore no jewelry and had skin only slightly darker than goat's cheese. He'd seen it turn a painful shade of red within minutes of being exposed to the hot desert sun. Shem's eyes darted around the circle as the nomad paused to take a sip of his ale. People of all sorts crowded around the bonfire, sitting on woven blankets or the bare stone of the square, standing, parents carrying their children to give them a better view. Everyone's eyes were on the nomad's face, their expressions rapt. When I was 8 cycles old, my father allowed me to join him on a hunt across the marshes in the Here mountain range. Few animals lived near our village, but the mountains were teeming with wildlife. Shem felt a grin bloom on his face as he leaned forward in anticipation. Hunting stories were his favorite. They were always so full of adventure and traveling and creatures that couldn't possibly truly exist, which is exactly what he would have said mere hours ago about the animals splayed at the nomad's feet. For the 1000th time that evening, he glanced at the magnificent feline, its smoky coat blotted with black and steel-gray spots gleaming in the light of the flames. If not for its size, Shem would have claimed it was a cat. But how could it be, when its head almost reached the nomad's hip line when standing? Besides, none of the strays that ran around his city had a pattern even remotely similar to this one. The way the large spots followed one another almost reminded him of snake scales. Her name is Tawa. I found her 8 days into the hunt. She was bleeding, an arrow stuck in her shoulder, probably an awkward shot. The man moved his fingers to her left shoulder and pushed aside some of the fur to show off the scar hidden beneath. Tawa jerked, but otherwise remained calm. How did you get near her? Didn't she attack you? Shem blurted out, remembering too late that it was considered impolite to interrupt the nomad's tales. The boy sitting on Shem's left side elbowed him with a pointed look. Thick black lines ringed the traveler's green eyes. There was an intensity to them that made Shem squirm when they focused on him. He smiled, evidently not disturbed by Shem's interjection. His white teeth, surrounded by a shaggy jet-black beard, reminded Shem of the moon in the dark night sky. She did, but she was too weak to cause any real damage. Tawa's ears twitched and turned as different sounds drew her attention, but her amber eyes stayed still, focused on her master, communicating a sense of calm that Shem found odd in a creature of her wild nature. I caught her, earning myself an earful from my father. The nomad chuckled. I took out the arrow and nursed her back to health. When she was ready to strike out again on her own, we went back to the mountains and I released her. She sniffed around for a while, then padded over to lie at my feet. We've been together since. There were a few gasps of admiration from the crowd, people still staring at Tawa with large eyes, half of the crowd starting every time she moved, as if afraid she would attack. We thank you for your tale, nomad, said someone, several murmurs echoing the words. The bearded traveler nodded solemnly, pulling a pipe from his pocket as people started to disperse, most of them keeping what they considered a safe distance between themselves and Tawa. Shem heard excited conversations spark up as they left, wondering what other strange tales they might hear around the city that night. Soon, Shem, the nomad, and Tawa were the only ones left sitting at the bonfire. And I'll leave it at that.
Hi, I am so excited to be sharing this poem with you. I'd like to, thanks, Guy. I'd like to talk just a little bit about how this poem came into the world. It was a dare from fellow poet Todd, who said to me, Leslie, I can see you writing a book of poems and smack in the middle is a traditional sonnet. I do not write traditional sonnets. So I said, great, I will take that challenge. And I thought, if I'm going to write a poem that I would put in a book, I should start like right then and there. And this is the poem that arose. A sonnet for Zachary Schomburg. On windy days, I like to think on how your gesture brings the kindness to the way I slip my syntax in impromptus now, that gentle tossing corn to piglets lay. On moonlit nights, I dare in wonder's ease to front the best word choice, not to scoff at phrases that I know I soon must tweeze. So in the end, the reader's heads blow off. But sunshine days are hardest hitting times, remembering the wine and Cajun fries, outside the bar in breeze and you sublime. Perplexed and hungry we 6 pairs of eyes. Without your guidance, surely they'd been ditched. My poems bow to you with every pitch. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. My name is Abby, and I'll be reading an excerpt from my piece, The Problem with Trumpets. There were only 5 other tables in the cafe, though he usually didn't notice the other occupants. The outside framing of the cafe was blue, but it was the kind of blue that made the sky uncomfortable because it couldn't live up to the paint. It was a touristy part of town, and bright colors were expected. They made people excited, made them feel as if they were visiting somewhere new that had never before been seen. Across the street was a pub, golden lights behind deep burgundy curtains. The gold cursive of the sign stretched above the doorframe was missing a letter. The Oil Pub. He hated that pub and that missing letter. It got into his head, caused chaos with the possibility of a timpani staying silent on a downbeat that should instead be full. It was 3:02 p.m. He settled in, picked up a blue pen, and began, peering over his glasses at the score while the pen steadily counted the beats in a dance through the air. He hesitated every once in a while, pausing to jot a note or circle a problem, but his hand quickly returned to hovering, conducting an orchestra only he could hear. The fat under his chin was bothering him. It kept distracting the hand that turned the pages of the score. A new mole sat on the skin there. He discovered it that morning upon a cursory glance in the mirror. He couldn't remember what it looked like, but his fingers kept returning to bother it, as if it were a scab that he could slough off in favor of the redness it would leave behind. But the real problem was that the horn section was always off in this part of the piece. Somewhere in these 8 bars, it didn't all fit. He determined that the horns were the problem only after eliminating the possibility that the violins were at fault. He could hear it now, the trumpets. The whole piece could be ruined by 8 bars that didn't fit, and then that would be the end of it. He tilted his head up, searching for harmony in the corner where the window and the wall and the ceiling all met. A passing umbrella distracted his gaze, sending the trumpets whirling out of control. A face in an apartment window across the street, a witness to his predicament. The woman was old, wrinkles hanging on her face made more apparent by her extreme stillness and lack of expression. Her white hair sat in loose curls on her head, though he suspected it was a wig. His bald scalp hissed with a chill from the window. She was right above the missing letter, as if she could make up for its absence with her presence. A burgundy lampshade, tilted askew, gave the bottom of her face an eerie glow, lighting her throat, which hung in loose strips, as if she didn't have enough strength to support her own skin. He wondered if the books piled on the windowsill were hers. If so, she must have read them because they held zero interest for her eyes. She was captivated by the rain, watching the bobbing and weaving of umbrellas passing on the street below. He didn't realize how long he'd been staring until she blinked, slowly, as if taking her time would prolong her death. This blink exposed that she was, in fact, staring directly at him and had been for some time. His fingers scratched at his mole self-consciously. She must see it there on the fat beneath his chin, and maybe she stared because it made his already thin mouth seem thinner. He flipped back a few pages in the score, starting at the beginning of the section. The violins had a lyrical melody, slowly building the rest of the symphony into their chorus. The pen flounced in the air, its graceful pattern stumbling once again upon the entrance of the horns, surprised each time by their blare. He pursed his lips, wondering if the pull of skin would stretch the mole and make it look bigger. Maybe the trombones were the problem, except his pen didn't stop when they began their drone. It was only upon the entrance of the trumpets, but he couldn't eliminate their statement. Maybe they simply needed mutes. The smell of stale smoke crawled through the window. He turned towards it instinctively, but he couldn't smoke again so soon. The woman was still watching him from the window. He couldn't tell if she was breathing, but knew that she must be, or she wouldn't be able to stand so still. He couldn't see anything but her head from this angle, her body blocked by the windowsill and rain between them, which was more of a mist, but enough precipitation to cause the window to fog, blurring the edges of her face. She almost looked like his wife through the blur, or at least what he remembered his wife had looked like years ago before she passed. She would have noticed the mole earlier, would have batted him down the street to the doctor with her cane, tisking her tongue against her teeth between lectures about smoking and eating and health. The woman in the window, who wasn't his wife, must be listening to music, he decided. There was no other explanation. His fingers were cold, and the mole felt like it had grown. And we'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What a nice way to conclude these readings. Beautifully read, all of you. Thanks so much. And we've got a couple of questions. There is a question for Zala, and I'm just, yeah, there it is, from Marta. And Marta says, Zala, on world building, do you start with the characters and then build the world around them? Or do you first create the world and then the characters? What are your priorities when world building?
Thank you for that. I guess it depends on the world and the characters. For this particular universe, I created the main character first and then build the world around her. But I've had it happen the other way around too, so it really just depends on the situation, I suppose. As for the priorities, I guess just, you know, whatever inspires me at the moment, I'll work on that, and then some other time something else will come up and I'll develop that aspect of the world. So I try to cover all of the main things to make it feel as real as possible, and then whatever works.
Amazing, thank you. Bear with me because we're actually getting quite a lot of comments and questions, so I'm taking a tiny bit longer to sort through them. And I hope I don't miss any of your questions. Oh, and also it doesn't help that it just jumped all the way down. So yeah, for Leslie from Alicia, that sonnet was gorgeous. Wow, music is so important for a sonnet, and it seemed so natural in this poem here. How do you find sound and meaning interact in your poetry, whether in form or not?
What a wonderful question. Oh my gosh. How do I find sound and meaning in the poem?
Yeah, how do you find they interact?
How do I find they interact? So I don't write the poem writes me. I come up with perhaps an idea, maybe it's a word, maybe I have a lot of phrases that I put together. And the way that I refer to it, I have no idea what the actual thing is, but an aperture opens and the thing happens. Sound and rhythm they just come naturally to me. And I think especially with this sonnet having a very definite rhythm that I had to follow. I come from a dance background. And so it's easy for me to transfer that into my work. And meaning, I don't know where the meaning comes from. It comes from somewhere in me, somewhere out there that's coming through me. I don't make the meaning on purpose. It happens because I'm thinking, I'm open to whatever the subject is, in this case, my main teacher, Zach. So yeah, it happens. And then to go back and make the sounds and make the rhythms fit into a traditional a piece, there's the work. Thank you for that question.
All right, Leslie, and actually we've got a comment from Zach, which I feel I should read out in response to it. And it starts with 3 exclamation marks and says, "That was stunning, Leslie. My heart feels big. I want those Cajun fries now, and to spend the eve in our group talking poems. I miss it all." And
I do too.
it's followed. It's how lovely of you to join us, and it's followed with a question: what little risks and little leaps in the form made you to feel that you didn't feel before?
Would you read the question one more time?
It says, what little risks and little leaps in the form made you to feel that you didn't feel before?
Made me to feel, that I didn't feel before. I think everything together in a compact, the sonnet is 14 lines, and I had to compact 3 years of working with Zach, which is a lot of, I mean, we did, I don't know, 12, 13 sets of workshopping, and I had so much material. There's so much that I could say and wanted to say that this could be a crown of sonnets if I would have just kept going. And so I don't know, again, it just, whatever I saw in my mind, I saw us sitting there at the table and really tried to pick and choose the most precious moments. And that's kind of hard to do because there's 3 years of very many of them. Thank you, Zach. Oh, Lena, we can't hear you.
Thanks, Leslie. I said, thank you, Leslie. And we have a question from Jennifer for Abby. Abby, how do you find yourself in the head and voice of a character in such a different phase of life? Was it daunting?
I don't know that it was daunting. To be honest, it was someone who I saw in real life and had one of those moments of, oh, I wonder what their life is, and kind of just running with that. So It was pretty fun, but also a little hard in trying to make it still sound authentic. Thank you.
Thanks, Abby, and thanks everybody for the question. Oh, I thought you were signaling at me that the mic was off, so I got distracted for a second. So now you can all hear me, okay? Yes, thanks so much for all the comments and questions. And let me just, oh yeah, there's another question for you, Abby, from Marta, which is, do you have experience as a musician or in an orchestra?
Yes, I do. I played the flute growing up for a lot of my life, and being in the orchestra was one of my favorite things. So I think it was a day that I was listening to classical music or must have been missing that, and kind of enjoyed putting myself back in that headspace and those sounds. Thanks.
Nice, thank you. And I'd also just like to share a comment by my friend from Cornwall. And she says, proper job. And I can't do a Cornish accent either, but I just had to bring that into this stream as well. And then we've also had comments from Jane McKee, who says she loves Zala's Wolf, and also from, and Jane McKee is our program director on the MSc for creative writing. And then we also had a comment from Tracy S. Rosenberg, who is our writer in residence, sorry. And she loves Leslie's star earrings. So apparently all our tutors are more interested in our decorations than our writing, which is totally not true. And I love the fact that so many of you have joined us here tonight, and I for one feel very honored that you've joined us, and so I would like to use this opportunity to say a massive thank you to you all. I think as the editor of this volume, I can speak for the other writers as well as for myself, and say we have learned a lot. And it's only been 2 semesters. We still have the whole process of writing our dissertations to go through. And you've all been so helpful and supported us so well. And we really, really appreciate that. This wasn't planned, but I'm gonna read out the thank you note that we have in the anthology because it just feels like it belongs here. Special thanks from all involved to everybody who supported us personally. So that's you, friends and family, everybody who've tuned in today. We're grateful and we couldn't do it without your support. And to Tracy S. Rosenberg, Edinburgh University writer in residence, for advice, support, and organizing helpful events. Jane McKee, Creative Writing MSc Program Director, for advice, support, and extraordinarily competent and kind leadership through difficult times. Jane Alexander, Robert Allen Jameson, Patrick James Errington, Alan Gillis, Alison Stack, Alice Thompson, and Miriam Gamble, creative writing professors, for their invaluable support, feedback, advice, encouragement, and kindness. James T. Harding for friendly and expert publishing advice. Anne Landman for friendly and expert publishing and event management advice. Magali Roman, Marelle Debert, and Sonali Misra for passing on their expertise from FAS in previous years. Lighthouse Books for creating community in the face of chaos and for kind support and expert advice. Blackwell's for planning a launch party with us that will hopefully happen at some point. Ella Keem for quick, consistent and friendly support. Cara McCormack for keeping us sane during exam time. And last but not least, to the Department of Languages, Literatures and Cultures at the University of Edinburgh for creating this opportunity. Yeah, because it is an amazing opportunity. It's this kind of real responsibility that we were given that I think has helped us grow as writers and also professionally. And I want to conclude this with one last question that I saw earlier and that I'm just going to look for now and hopefully find quickly. Yep, and it's from Jennifer. A general question about the anthology. Did everyone in the program submit work, and how did you select among those submissions? With faculty help or student committee? And the answer to that is we didn't. So actually what you've heard, like, this is how amazing all the students are. And to study with such a talented cohort can be very daunting, but most of the time it's just incredibly enriching. And I have learned a lot from my fellow students and from my fellow students who are my friends. You're all my friends, and I'm very honored to be studying with you and working with you and writing with you. And basically what we did was we tried to make sure that everybody would be able to submit their best work for this anthology. So rather than making a rigorous selection process, we made sure that we had the support systems in place that the writers needed, which was in the form of workshopping and lots of rounds of editing. So I also have all the editors to thank. And yeah, it's just been an amazing process, and we didn't have to select. We're just publishing all of our nice pieces of writing, and yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that. And we've been running for almost exactly 1.5 hours, which was our target length for this stream and for this video. So thanks, and like massive round of applause for everybody who read here today. It's been an absolute pleasure to listen to you.
Actually, I wanted to say one more thing before we go, if that's possible.
That's possible.
Yes, I just want to say thank you to Lena for being our editor-in-chief with all of this. You have done such a fantastic job. You can't see it in the big chat, but everyone's clapping their hands in the in our little windows here. I just wanted to say thank you so much, Lena, for everything that you've done and all the incredible work that you put into this, because you said thank you to everybody but yourself. So thanks so much. And also don't forget to join us. We have the 2 other streams happening as well. I'm leading one tomorrow at 3 p.m. British time, and then Lauren is leading one at 11 a.m. on Sunday. So there we go.
And also, please buy our book. That's it from us for tonight. Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for joining.